You begin this night standing on the threshold of a year that already exists, not a year you hope for, not a year you wish for, a year that is quietly waiting for you to enter it. You may not feel it yet, but somewhere in the unseen, 2026 has already taken shape, not as a promise, but as a response. Your world has been answering the state you've been living in, the moods you repeated, the assumptions you carried without noticing, the silent conclusions you made about yourself when no one was listening. And if nothing changed tonight, 2026 would simply echo the same patterns, dressed in slightly different clothing. Another cycle, another repetition, another year that feels strangely familiar. But this night is different, because tonight you are about to alter the origin of your future. Neville Goddard taught that your life bends not to what you want, but to what you accept as true. Your inner acceptance becomes the architecture of your world, and inside you there is a truth you have not fully claimed, a truth that has been knocking softly at the edges of your awareness, waiting for a moment exactly like this one. Tonight, you step into a new assumption, a new identity, a new inner atmosphere so coherent, so alive, that the year ahead cannot help but conform to it. Before we continue, take a moment to support the journey you are beginning. Become a channel member to access exclusive teachings, deep dive guides, and tools designed to reinforce this transformation from the inside out. Your support allows this message to reach more people who are ready for change. Now, breathe. Not to relax your body, but to prepare your awareness, because what you are about to hear will not simply inspire you, it will reorganize the way your future unfolds. You're not listening to instructions. You're not listening to motivation. You're listening to the version of yourself who already crossed into the life you've been yearning for. And this voice, the one you're hearing right now, is here for one reason: to guide you into the state that turns 2026 into the best year you have ever lived. As you move through each chapter, you will feel something subtle shifting, a loosening, a recalling, a remembering, almost as if your deeper self knew this path all along and you are finally catching up to it. By the end of this journey, you will understand something astonishing. You were never waiting for 2026 to be different. 2026 was waiting for you to be different. Stay with this message all the way through. And if you are ready for the year that mirrors the highest version of yourself, then keep listening. You are about to cross a line inside your consciousness. A line that once crossed cannot be undone. You don't step into 2026 as a blank slate. You step into it as a continuation of the state you have been accepting, nurturing, and repeating, consciously or unconsciously. And if you listen closely, you can feel it. The faint echo of your current assumptions stretching forward, trying to mold the coming year into something familiar, something predictable, something safe, even if it's not what you want. But tonight, something inside you begins to question that inevitability. You start to sense a strange truth. 2026 already exists, and it is waiting for you to decide which version of it you will inhabit, not through effort, not through force, but through the quiet, powerful act of assuming a new identity. Neville meant every word when he taught that your world is a mirror held up to your inner conversations. Not the words you speak publicly, but the ones you whisper to yourself in the quiet corridors of your mind. And if you pay attention, you can feel those whispers shaping your days, your choices, your reactions. They shape the opportunities you notice and the ones you walk past without realizing. Tonight is your invitation to break that cycle. You stand at the edge of a year that is malleable, fluid, unformed. It responds to the slightest shift in your state of being. It bends to your inner atmosphere. It listens to your assumptions as though they were commands. The truth is simple and unsettling. You are already influencing 2026, even now, from where you sit, from who you believe yourself to be. So ask yourself gently, what have you been assuming? What have you been accepting as unchangeable? What identity have you been unknowingly rehearsing? Because that identity, left untouched, will recreate itself again and again in slightly different colors, slightly different situations, but always the same feeling underneath. And you know this. You've lived this. You've felt the repetition of circumstances that seemed coincidental, but were actually manifestations of a deeper internal continuity. But as you hear these words, something in you begins to loosen. The old assumptions feel less solid. The old conclusions feel less inevitable. You begin to notice the subtle space between who you have been and who you can decide to be. And in that space, something extraordinary becomes possible. You start to imagine 2026 not as a hope, but as a memory, a year already lived in your imagination, a year where things went right, where opportunities unfolded without resistance, where you felt aligned, certain, deeply anchored in your power. You allow yourself to feel that version of the year, not as fantasy, but as the quiet, magnetic truth of your inner being. Neville taught that the future is not something you wait for, it is something you select. And selection happens through feeling, not through effort, through assumption, not through striving. So tonight, you let yourself choose. You choose a 2026 where you walk with an identity you have never fully claimed before. A 2026 where wealth feels natural. A 2026 where you meet life with quiet confidence instead of quiet fear. A 2026 where the world rearranges itself to match the new center you stand in. And as you choose it, something remarkable occurs. The version of you who already lived that year begins to draw closer. You feel your consciousness aligning with that self, not the self limited by old memories, but the self defined by new assumptions. You feel it in the subtle shift of your inner dialogue, in the way your breathing slows, in the way your awareness deepens, in the way your imagination begins to respond. For the first time in a long time, you sense that you are not at the mercy of your circumstances. You sense that your circumstances have been at the mercy of your state all along. This realization doesn't overwhelm you. It frees you, because now you understand something essential. 2026 is not waiting to be created. It is waiting to be entered through a state, entered through a feeling, entered through a new assumption about who you are. You've spent years believing that life changes when circumstances change. You've waited for opportunities, for luck, for better timing, for the right people to appear. You've tried to improve your habits, push harder, think more positively, or stay motivated long enough for something to shift. But deep down, you know the truth. Every time you tried to change your life from the outside, it eventually slipped back into the same familiar pattern. Tonight, you understand why. There is an invisible error, one so subtle, so easy to overlook, that it quietly shapes entire years of your life. You try to change circumstances without first changing the state that produces them. Neville called this the great misunderstanding. You've been trying to rearrange the shadows instead of changing the light that casts them. Your outer life is nothing but a reflection of the inner state you return to over and over. Not the state you visit once during meditation. Not the state you momentarily touch when you feel inspired. But the state you habitually occupy when you're not paying attention, the one you fall asleep in, the one you wake up in, the one that colors every assumption you make about who you are and what your life can hold. And here is the devastating part. If you do not consciously select a new state, your mind returns to the old one by default. The familiar one, the predictable one, the one built from memories rather than possibilities. That old state is what tries to recreate 2024, 2023, and every year before it. Different events, same emotion. Different people, same dynamic. Different goals, same resistance. You've lived enough life to recognize the pattern, and yet you've blamed circumstances, timing, effort, or fate. But tonight you see it for what it is. Your life has been repeating the state you have been accepting as yourself. And suddenly, the pattern loses its power. Because once you see the mechanism, you can interrupt it. You can choose differently. You can stop trying to fix the reflection and adjust the source instead. Feel this truth. You don't break the cycle by working harder. You break the cycle by assuming a new identity. Neville taught that your identity, your self-concept, creates the entire structure of your life. Your reactions, your expectations, your relationships, your finances, your sense of what is possible. Everything grows out of who you believe yourself to be. So ask yourself now, with complete honesty, who have you been being? Not who you want to be, not who you hope to be someday, but who you have been accepting as me in the quiet moments of your day. Have you been assuming the identity of lack, the identity of someone struggling to improve, the identity of someone who hopes things will get better but fears they won't, the identity of someone who reacts to life rather than commands it from within? Whatever identity you accept, reality mirrors it, without fail, without exception. And this is where the error becomes powerful. Until tonight. You've been trying to create a new year while living in an old state. You've been imagining a better future while carrying the emotional atmosphere of your past. You've been trying to enter a new chapter while holding the identity that belongs to the previous one. But as these words settle into you, you begin to feel a separation from the old state, a distance, a loosening of its grip, a quiet realization that you are not obligated to return to it. You are not bound by your history. You are bound only by the state you keep repeating. And now you see the doorway. 2026 cannot be new if you are not new, not externally, but internally. Your inner shift is the cause. The outer transformation is merely the echo. You feel something soften within you as this truth becomes real, because suddenly life becomes simpler. You don't need to control circumstances. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to wait for signs. You only need to assume the identity that belongs to the life you want to live. That is the end of the error, and it is the beginning of your freedom. There comes a moment in your life when you feel something subtle but unmistakable, a pull, a tension, a faint pressure coming from a version of you that already exists. A version living a life that feels almost unreal compared to the one you've known. You sense it in dreams, in sudden bursts of clarity, in the quiet moments when you imagine a future that feels too vivid to be fantasy. Tonight is that moment. Tonight, you stop observing your life from the outside and begin stepping into the identity that creates it. Because Neville's most radical teaching was never about manifesting objects or events. It was about shifting states, and in doing so, shifting timelines. He wasn't speaking poetically, he meant it literally. Every state is a world, every assumption is a reality, every identity is a timeline waiting to be occupied. And the moment you accept a new identity, deeply, quietly, without strain, you switch tracks. Not gradually, not over years, instantly. But because your senses are slow to reorganize, you don't always notice the shift right away. You think nothing happened. You think things are still the same. But something has already begun. Your world is reconfiguring itself around your new state. Tonight, you feel that shift happening inside you. You feel the old state losing its authority, like a fading signal from a radio station you no longer resonate with. And as it fades, a new frequency rises. A new timeline becomes available, one where 2026 unfolds not from fear or habit, but from deliberate identity. So you ask yourself quietly, who is the version of you that already lived an extraordinary 2026? How do they feel when they wake up? What assumptions do they take for granted? What inner tone do they carry without effort? What do they know about themselves that you have not yet allowed yourself to believe? Don't answer with words. answer with feeling, because you shift timelines through feeling, not thought. And as you feel into that version of yourself, even if only for a moment, you begin to sense a presence, a calmness, a quiet inner certainty, a lack of urgency, a lack of fear, a lack of self-doubt. It feels like coming home to someone you were always meant to be. This is the state that changes everything. This is the identity that births a new year. This is the version of you that 2026 has been waiting for. Neville said, "Your assumption, if persisted in, will harden into fact." But the secret is this: assumption is not repetition. Assumption is acceptance. You shift timelines the moment you accept a new inner truth. And tonight, you accept the truth of your new identity, not because you see evidence of it, but because you choose it. The evidence comes later. It must. The outer world cannot resist the command of a consistent inner state. For the first time, you stop begging your future to be different. You stop hoping, you stop pleading, you stop waiting. And instead, you decide. You decide who you are. You decide what 2026 is. You decide what unfolds. You decide the inner tone that will shape the outer world. And as this decision settles into your awareness, you begin to feel something extraordinary. You are no longer trying to reach a future. You are remembering it. The timeline in which you thrive is not ahead of you. It is overlapping with your present, waiting for your identity to align with it. And as you align with it, you feel the shift. Your breathing slows. Your chest feels lighter. Your mind stops searching for evidence. You no longer wonder if things will change. You know they must, because you are in a different state now, and a different state demands a different world. The old timeline, the old patterns, the old reactions, they no longer have a home inside you. They collapse without drama. They dissolve without resistance. They simply stop receiving your attention, and without attention, they cannot survive. Tonight, you step into the timeline where 2026 becomes the year you finally saw what you were capable of, the year when everything aligned, the year when hard effort was replaced by effortless embodiment, the year you became the cause, not the effect. You have heard the word state many times. You've repeated it, reflected on it, tried to understand it, but tonight you don't just understand it, you enter it. You begin to feel what Neville meant when he said that your state of consciousness is the only creative power in your world. Not one of many forces, the only one. Everything else, effort, strategy, timing, action, is secondary. Your state is primary, your state is cause. Your state is the unseen blueprint from which your entire life emerges, and as you sit with this truth, something becomes clear. You have spent years trying to create a new life while carrying the emotional atmosphere of the old one. You tried to manifest abundance while feeling unworthy. You tried to manifest love while feeling insecure. You tried to manifest confidence while rehearsing doubt. You wished for a different year while returning every night to the same familiar patterns of feeling. But tonight, the pattern breaks. Because tonight you see that your state is not emotional noise, you are living inside it. Your relationships respond to it, your opportunities reflect it, your finances reveal it, your daily experiences play back its tone like an echo that never lies. This is why your life sometimes feels repetitive, even when the details change. The state stays the same, so the world has no choice but to follow. But now, you begin to feel the rarest moment in a human life, the moment when you become aware of your state instead of being controlled by it. You start to sense the space between the feelings you inherited and the feelings you choose. You recognize that what you called your personality was often just the emotional residue of your past. And for the first time, you sense the possibility that you can step out of that residue and into something new. Neville said, "You must enter the state of the wish fulfilled as if it were already true. But you've been trying to do it as a technique. Tonight, you do it as identity. So ask yourself quietly, What is the inner atmosphere of the version of you who already lived the best year of their life? What is the tone of their being, not their thoughts, not their actions, not their resolutions or routines, their tone? Do they move through their days with ease? Do they expect good news? Do they trust themselves? Do they assume their desires will unfold without struggle? Do they walk with the calm certainty of someone who knows life responds to them? Feel their state now. Let it rise inside you slowly, like a warmth you didn't know you were allowed to feel. Let it settle into your chest, your breathing, your awareness. You're not imagining, you're embodying. You are teaching your subconscious the emotional signature of the life you are selecting. You are showing your inner world the new frequency it must sustain. You are giving your future the instruction it needs. This is who I am now. And the moment you accept this new inner tone, something profound happens. Circumstances lose their power over you. Your past loses its authority. Your fears lose their momentum. You begin to feel a gentle, quiet confidence, one that doesn't need proof to exist. Because the state itself is the proof. Once the state is chosen, the year is chosen. Once the state is assumed, the timeline is locked. Once the state becomes natural, the world is compelled by law to conform. You no longer try to fix your life piece by piece. You no longer chase results. You no longer wait for signs to tell you you're doing it right. You now understand the secret that only a few ever discover. Your inner state is the seed, and the outer world is the harvest. You don't fix the harvest. You choose a different seed. And this new seed, the one you're holding now, carries the emotional essence of the life you've always wanted, but never believed you could claim. But you're claiming it tonight. Not through force, through acceptance. As this new state settles within you, you begin to feel the first quiet whispers of your new year taking shape, not through events you can see, but through a shift in your identity that you can feel. And because the inner world has changed, the outer world must follow you into 2026 with a new script, a new rhythm, a new destiny. There is a moment, quiet, private, unnoticed by the world, when your entire future begins to shift. Not through a dramatic event, not through a sudden miracle, but through a single night in which you finally allow yourself to feel the version of you that you have been too hesitant, too doubtful, or too tired to claim. Tonight is that night. Tonight, you understand what Neville truly meant when he spoke about the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You've heard the phrase before, but now you feel the weight of it. You feel the responsibility of it, and you feel the freedom hidden inside it. Because what Neville taught was not a technique, it was a change of inner residence, a relocation of your awareness from who you have been to who you choose to be. The world believes change takes time. Neville taught that change takes only one thing, an emotional acceptance deep enough to impress the subconscious. And your subconscious is not moved by logic. It is not convinced by effort. It is not persuaded by repetition alone. It is moved by the feeling you fall asleep in. That is why this night matters, because the state you accept before sleep becomes the creative mold for the world you wake into. Your subconscious does not question it. It does not analyze it. It does not argue with it. It simply takes the feeling you offer and builds reality around it, like a loyal servant following a silent command. So tonight, before you close your eyes, you step deliberately into the version of yourself who has already lived the most extraordinary 2026. You let that version breathe through you. You feel their confidence settling into your chest. You feel the lightness of their success in your stomach. You feel the calm certainty of someone whose life finally makes sense. This is not pretense. This is not imagination as fantasy. This is imagination as creation. Neville said, "Dare to believe in the reality of your assumption and watch the world play its part." So tonight, you dare. You dare to assume that everything works in your favor. You dare to assume that wealth flows to you with ease. You dare to assume that opportunities align effortlessly. You dare to assume that you are chosen by the life you once felt excluded from. You dare to assume that you are no longer the person who struggles to change, but the person for whom change is natural. As these assumptions settle into you, something begins to dissolve, quietly, gently, without struggle. The weight you've been carrying, the doubts you've been rehearsing, the fear that things will always feel just slightly out of reach. You feel these old emotions thinning like mist in the morning sun. They cannot coexist with your new state. The old year cannot survive the arrival of your new identity. Tonight is not about forcing yourself to believe. Tonight is about allowing yourself to remember. Because deep down, the version of you who thrives is not new. It is ancient. It has always existed in imagination, the only true reality. You are not creating that version. You are reuniting with it. Feel this truth. If you go to sleep tonight embodying the state of your ideal self, you will wake up in a world already shifting to match it. Not instantly in appearance, but instantly in trajectory. The moment you change states, the path beneath your feet rearranges, and reality, dense, physical, slow-moving reality, begins to reshape itself around your new assumption. This is why Neville insisted that the simplest moment of your day, the moment before sleep, is the most powerful of your entire life. Because in that moment, your subconscious is listening without resistance. It hears only your inner tone. It accepts only your emotional truth. It responds only to your state, not your doubts. So tonight you give it a new state, not the state of wishing, not the state of waiting, but the state of already having become the person who lives the year you desire. You let your last waking feeling be one of satisfaction, fulfillment, calm certainty, quiet joy, the emotional signature of a life that already unfolded in your favor. And when you do, something irreversible happens. Your future shifts. Your timeline locks. Your identity stabilizes. Your world begins its reconfiguration, all because of one night, this night. There comes a point in your inner transformation when the world stops feeling random. You begin to notice tiny cracks in the old reality, subtle openings, gentle rearrangements, small but undeniable shifts that whisper, something is changing. And for the first time, you realize the change isn't coming from the world. It's coming to the world from you. This is the moment Neville spoke of when he said that your assumption sets in motion forces beyond your conscious control. The moment your inner state stabilizes, your future begins to reorganize itself silently, obediently, with a precision that feels almost supernatural. And yet, this power has always been yours. You're only beginning to remember it. Tonight you feel the beginning of that response. Not in loud, dramatic ways, but in quiet, intelligent alignments that seem too coincidental to dismiss. A conversation that appears at the perfect moment. A thought that feels like guidance rather than imagination. A door that opens without effort. A problem that dissolves without struggle. These small signs are not random. They are the first outer ripples of your inner shift. Because once you change your state, the world must behave differently around you. It cannot argue. It cannot resist. It cannot ignore the new identity you are embodying. You begin to feel the truth of this when you notice your reactions changing. Situations that once triggered fear now evoke calm. Obstacles that once felt heavy now feel irrelevant. Conversations that once made you shrink now awaken your confidence. Opportunities you once doubted now feel natural, almost expected. This is the clearest sign that your new state is taking root. The world no longer intimidates you because you no longer believe in your own limitations. You feel yourself becoming the cause. You feel your desires losing their distance. You feel yourself stepping into inevitability rather than possibility. This is the moment when you understand Neville's most profound truth. Life is not happening to you. Life is happening from you. Your world is not an external force imposing itself on your identity. Your identity is the internal force shaping the world around you. And as this truth settles deeper into you, you begin to sense a shift in the atmosphere of 2026 itself. Not as a hope, not as a wish, but as something already unfolding beneath the surface of your experience. The more you stabilize your new state, the more the world responds with synchronicities, those meaningful alignments that feel too deliberate to be accidental. And when you see them, something inside you strengthens. Your faith sharpens, your confidence solidifies, your inner knowing becomes undeniable. You start to walk differently, you start to speak differently, you start to think differently, not because you are trying to act like your ideal self, but because you are your ideal self. The outer expression simply follows the inner identity, and with this embodiment comes a deep, unshakable peace. You no longer chase outcomes. You no longer beg for signs. You no longer wait for permission. You know who you are. You know the state you're living in. You know the year you are entering. And because you know, the future responds with precision. Every assumption you maintain sends a silent instruction to the world. Every feeling you sustain sets a new pattern in motion. Every inner shift rearranges your outer path. And as 2026 approaches, you realize you're not hoping for the best year of your life. You are commanding it through your state. You feel the timeline solidifying beneath your feet, no longer unstable, no longer contingent, no longer fragile. The identity you've chosen has become your home, and the world has begun remodeling itself to match it. This is the beginning of the year that rises to meet you. This is the beginning of the life that reflects you. This is the beginning of the future that listens when you speak from imagination. You arrive at the end of this journey not as the person who began it, but as the one who has finally remembered their power. You feel it now, quiet, steady, unmistakable, a truth that has been trying to reach you for years. Your world has never been separate from you. It has always been the reflection of your inner state. Tonight, that truth is no longer an idea. It is an experience. You feel the difference in your breathing, in your awareness, in the way your mind no longer searches for permission to change, but expects the world to respond to your identity. You understand now that 2026 is not waiting for luck, timing, or circumstances to align. It is waiting for one thing: your decision to inhabit the state that matches the life you want to live. This entire journey has been guiding you toward that decision, not through force, not through pressure, but through remembrance. Because deep within you, beneath the noise of old assumptions and the weight of old memories, there is a version of you that has always known the truth. You do not become powerful. You remember that you already are. You do not chase outcomes. You select states. You do not wait for life to change. You become the change life must mirror. And now you feel the simplicity of it, the elegance of it, the relief of it. You no longer need to convince yourself that things will get better. You no longer need to wait for signs to prove you're on the right path. You no longer need to fear repeating the past, because you recognize that repetition was never a curse. It was simply the echo of a state you had not yet questioned. But tonight, you questioned it. You saw it. You stepped out of it. And without the energy of your attention, the old state has already begun to dissolve. Now you stand aligned with a new identity, one that carries the emotional atmosphere of the life you once believed you could only dream about. And because you feel it now, because you accept it now, because you fall asleep in it now, your world has already begun rearranging itself in your favor. 2026 is not just a new year. It is a new timeline, a new reality, a new projection of your state. and you feel the stability of that timeline forming around you. Not through effort, but through consistency of being. Not through action, but through inner alignment. Not through striving, but through assuming the truth of your chosen identity. This is the part most people never reach, the point where desire becomes memory, where the future becomes familiar, where the impossible becomes natural, and you feel that shift within you now. It is subtle, but unmistakable. It is quiet, but powerful. It is gentle, but irreversible. You know that the best year of your life is not something you wait for. It is something you embody, and you have already begun. As this new identity settles into you, your subconscious begins its work, faithful, obedient, and precise. It listens to your emotional instructions and molds your world accordingly. Every day forward becomes a reflection of the state you chose tonight. Every event, every opportunity, every conversation aligns with the version of you who has already lived an extraordinary 2026. And as you move into the days ahead, you will notice it. The synchronicities, the shifts, the effortless alignments, the quiet unfolding of a year that feels entirely new because you are entirely new. Before you leave this experience, anchor your transformation into the world. Like this video to affirm your chosen state. Subscribe to the channel so your journey continues. Leave a comment. I walk into 2026 already fulfilled. Take this final truth with you. You are not hoping 2026 becomes the best year of your life. You are entering the state of the person for whom it already is, and once the state is chosen, the year must follow.